Okay, so you want to own an amusement park. You find a piece of land, you put up some rides, people buy tickets, and the money rolls in. Sounds like one of the most fun businesses in the world, right? You get to be surrounded by roller coasters, happy families, and cotton candy. What's not to love? Here's what's not to love. The land alone can cost you $30 million before a single bolt has been tightened. The first roller coaster you buy can run you $25 million fully installed. And on the day you open your gates for the first time, you will already owe so much money to so many people that a single bad summer could wipe out everything. This is the business of amusement parks. And almost nobody who looks at it from the outside understands what it actually costs to survive inside it. Let's start from the very beginning. Before you can build anything, you need somewhere to build it. And the location you choose will determine almost everything about whether your park ever makes money. Here's the rule that every serious park developer follows. You need to be within a 60 to 90-minute drive of a major city, close enough that families will make the trip on a weekend. Far enough that the land doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. If you try to build in a city, the land is too expensive and too small. You can't expand, you can't build parking, you can't grow. If you build too far out in the countryside, you're affordable but invisible. Nobody drives 3 hours for a regional park they've never heard of, so you're looking at suburban corridors. And in the United States and the United Kingdom, those corridors around major metropolitan areas do not come cheap. A small family entertainment center might acquire land for somewhere between $200,000 and $1 million. A mid-sized regional park, the kind with a few coasters and a water section, is looking at anywhere from $3 million to $15 million just for the ground it sits on. A large destination park, you're potentially spending $30 to $50 million before you've broken soil. But the purchase price is just the beginning. First, you need to study the land before you buy it. Environmental impact assessments, soil testing to make sure the ground can hold the weight of your rides, water table analysis, traffic impact studies to satisfy the local municipality. These pre-development costs easily reach hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they happen before a single shovel touches the earth. You haven't built a single thing yet, and you've already spent a fortune. Then there's parking. And this is where most people completely underestimate the footprint of this business. A mid-sized regional park expecting 15,000 visitors on a peak day needs between 4,000 and 5,000 parking spaces. Every space, accounting for driving lanes and pedestrian paths, takes up about 350 to 400 square feet. You do that math and you're looking at between 35 and 45 acres of flat paved land just to store cars. That's land that generates zero revenue. It doesn't have a ride on it, it doesn't have a restaurant on it, it is asphalt. And it costs a fortune to build, maintain, and eventually resurface. And then you need to hold additional land in reserve for the expansion you'll need in 10 years when your current rides become tired and guests stop coming back. Parks that don't buy that buffer land early almost always regret it. By the time they need to expand, a housing development has gone up next door and the price has tripled. Now you have your land. Let's talk about what it actually costs to turn it into something people will pay to visit. Most people assume the rides are the expensive part. They're not. The expensive part is everything underneath, around, and supporting the rides. Civil engineering and infrastructure, the roads, drainage systems, foundations, electrical grid, water lines, and sewage systems consistently account for 50 to 65% of the total construction budget. More than the rides themselves. Here's why. When you build a roller coaster, you're not just installing a machine on flat ground. You are driving deep concrete piers into the earth, sometimes 30 to 40 feet down, because the forces a coaster generates, the lateral push, the vertical drop, the rotational stress at the bottom of a loop, are massive and continuous. Those forces happen hundreds of thousands of times over the life of the ride. If the foundations aren't engineered correctly, the ride fails. Then there are the utilities. A theme park is essentially a small city. It needs its own electrical substation because the power draw is enormous. Modern magnetic launch coasters, the kind that shoot trains from 0 to 70 miles per hour in 2 seconds, draw megawatts of electricity in a single moment. Without your own dedicated infrastructure, you'd cause brownouts in the surrounding neighborhood every time you launched a train. Building that power supply system alone can cost several $1,000,000. And then there's the theming. The facades that make one section of your park look like a medieval castle and another like a tropical island. The trees, the landscaping, the hidden speakers in the bushes playing ambient music. All of this costs money that has nothing to do with whether the rides work, but it's what makes guests feel like they're somewhere else, which is what makes them spend more money while they're there. For a mid-sized regional park with a total construction budget of around $25 million, roughly $8 to $9 million goes to rides. About 5 million to civil infrastructure, 3 to 4 million to land acquisition and site preparation, and design fees, engineering consultants, contingency reserves, and pre-opening costs eat the rest. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Cost overruns are the norm, not the exception. Across major theme park developments, overruns average 12 to 22% above the original budget. Build in a contingency. Then add more contingency. Now let's talk about the attractions themselves, because this is where developers make some of their most consequential financial decisions. A small kiddie spinner or carousel runs between $100,000 and $700,000. Water rides like river rapids or log flumes cost between $300,000 and $5 million, depending on length and elaborateness. A family-oriented interactive dark ride, where guests sit in a moving vehicle and shoot targets projected on screens, runs anywhere from $500,000 to $4 million. A standard regional steel roller coaster from a manufacturer like Vekoma, Mack Rides, or Bolliger and Mabillard runs between $5 million and $30 million for the hardware alone. But by the time you add shipping costs, import tariffs, foundation engineering, electrical installation, and surrounding theming, a $15 million coaster easily becomes a $25 million installed asset. And then there are the mega attractions. Universal's Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal Orlando reportedly cost around $300 million. Disney's Guardians of the Galaxy. Cosmic Rewind at Epcot is estimated at around $500 million. These are not simply rides. They are enclosed, climate-controlled show buildings filled with custom animatronic figures, synchronized audio systems, and proprietary vehicle technology that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. One coaster can cost more than some professional sports stadiums. That tells you everything you need to know about the capital intensity of this industry. Here is a line item that new park developers consistently underestimate. The cost of keeping people alive every single morning. Before a single guest walks through your gates, every ride must be inspected. Certified maintenance technicians spend between 30 and 45 minutes per major attraction checking structural joints, brake systems, restraint mechanisms, electrical connections, hydraulic pressure levels, and proximity sensors. Then they run empty test cycles at full speed and sign physical logbooks confirming the ride is safe to operate. This happens every single day, 7 days a week, rain or shine. Your regulatory authority, a government body in most American states and British counties, requires periodic independent third-party engineering audits. Specialists come in with ultrasonic equipment and magnetic particle testing kits to look for microscopic fatigue cracks in steel that the human eye can never see. If they find something, the ride comes down until it's fixed. That ride isn't generating revenue while it's down, but your fixed costs keep running. Insurance is another enormous expense. Premiums for a mid-sized regional park typically consume between 3 and 6% of total annual gross revenue. For a park generating $10 million a year, that's between $300,000 and $600,000 annually, just in insurance. And that number goes up every single time something goes wrong, at your park or anywhere else in the industry, because maintenance never stops. Your engineering team runs essentially a 24-hour operation. During the day, technicians manage live issues. At night, crews replace worn brake pads, swap hydraulic seals, reprogram sensor arrays, and complete work that can't happen with guests on property. Safety isn't a cost you can cut. It is the cost of staying in business. Now let's talk about the single largest operating expense you have. People labor costs at an amusement park consistently run between 30 and 40% of total gross annual revenue. At a large destination resort employing 10,000 to 20,000 people, that is a staggering payroll. Think about every job required to run a single day. Ride operators at every attraction. Maintenance engineers on every shift. Janitors continuously working through the crowd. Performers and character actors. Chefs, line cooks, food cart operators, security personnel, registered nurses and EMTs, IT technicians, marketing staff, accountants, lawyers, HR teams, management at every level. A ride operator isn't someone you point at a coaster and tell to push the green button. They need to understand emergency evacuation procedures, restraint verification protocols, what to do if the ride stops mid-cycle, and how to manage a queue line during a crisis. That training takes time and money every single season. Then there's the seasonal problem. Most regional parks in the United States and UK operate for somewhere between 120 and 180 days per year. You scale up to a full workforce in April or May, run at maximum capacity through August, then scale dramatically back down in September. Recruiting thousands of seasonal workers every spring, training them in a compressed window, and releasing most of them in the autumn is a massive operational burden. And the workers who stick around through winter, your year-round core of salaried managers and full-time mechanics, Are your most expensive employees, generating no revenue while the park is dark? Beyond labor, there is a second category of costs that runs whether you have one guest or 50,000 guests. Utilities. Amusement parks are extraordinary consumers of electricity and water. Utility costs typically eat between 4 and 7% of gross annual revenue. When a modern magnetic launch coaster fires, it draws enough power in a single moment to light up a small neighborhood. Parks with multiple launch coasters need industrial capacitor banks that store and release energy in controlled bursts to prevent destabilizing the local grid. Water parks and water rides add another massive burden. A wave pool or river rapids ride can require millions of gallons of treated water, continuously filtered, chemically balanced, and pumped around the clock. Waste disposal, diesel fuel for maintenance vehicles, fiber optic internet for your point-of-sale systems, lighting, all of it adds up to a utility bill that is permanently, immovably, a major line item in your monthly budget. And the lights don't go off when it rains. Here's where the business gets genuinely interesting. The way parks price their tickets is far more sophisticated than most people realize. The industry has moved almost entirely away from flat-rate pricing. What they use now is dynamic pricing, which works roughly the same way airline tickets work. On a peak summer Saturday in late July, a single-day ticket to a major regional park in the United States might cost $120. On a Tuesday in mid-September, the same ticket might be $45. The algorithm extracts maximum revenue from visitors who don't care what they pay, while filling otherwise empty days with visitors who would stay home at full price. But the more interesting innovation of the past decade isn't dynamic pricing. It's the line-skipping pass. Universal has its Express Pass, Disney has its Lightning Lane. You pay between $15 and $400 per person for the right to skip to a shorter queue. Here's the economic reality of that. The ride already exists. The staff already exists. The park is already open. The marginal cost of selling you a line-skipping pass is essentially zero. No additional labor, no additional infrastructure. It is software and a wristband. The profit margin on these products routinely exceeds 90%. If you've been following the math so far, you might be wondering, if tickets generate the most gross revenue, why do parks put so much energy into everything else? Here's the answer. Ticket revenue covers your costs. Everything else is your profit. The gate, admission tickets, generates roughly 62 to 69% of a park's total gross revenue. But that money is almost entirely spoken for before it arrives. Civil infrastructure debt service, labor, utilities, insurance, ride maintenance, marketing, all of it. The ticket revenue keeps the lights on and little more. Food and beverage generates roughly 17% of total park revenue, but its contribution to actual profit is wildly disproportionate. A large fountain soda retails for between $5 and $7. The actual cost, water, syrup, cup, lid, straw, is measured in pennies. Gross margins on fountain drinks regularly exceed 85 to 90%. Popcorn is even better. Bulk corn kernels, oil, and a paper bag cost almost nothing. A bag sells for $6 to $12. Put it in a collectible-themed bucket, and guests pay $15 to $20 and come back next season to buy this year's version. Merchandise generates around 8% of total revenue. A generic plush toy costs a few dollars wholesale, but that same toy with a proprietary character on it. A character the guest just rode past inside your park retails for $25 to $35. Guests aren't buying a stuffed animal. They're buying a memory. Parking generates between 4 and 6% of revenue at parks that charge for it, and almost every major park in the United States does charge, at between $25 and $50 per car. The asphalt has already been paid for. Every parking fee is essentially pure margin. If you're enjoying this breakdown of how the money actually moves in this business, it would mean a lot if you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It helps more people find content like this. There's a point in the life cycle of a successful regional park where management faces a critical decision. Stay a day trip destination or become a resort. A day trip guest arrives in the morning, buys a ticket, eats lunch, buys a souvenir, and goes home. You capture maybe $120 to $150 per person across their entire visit. A resort guest checks in the night before, has dinner at your hotel restaurant, spends 2 or 3 days at your park buying multi-day admission passes, has breakfast at your hotel, buys multiple souvenirs, and checks out after you've captured $300 to $500 per person across their stay. That's the math. But the strategic advantages go deeper than just spending more per person. Resort hotels dramatically expand a park's geographic catchment area. A day trip park draws guests from within 60 to 90 minutes of its location. A resort park draws guests from across the country and around the world. The moment you add hotel rooms, you start appearing in travel planning websites, airline booking packages, and vacation bucket lists that a regional park never reaches. On-site hotels also create what the industry calls a captive spending environment. When your guests are staying at your hotel, eating at your restaurants, and riding your shuttle buses, 100% of their vacation dollar stays within your ecosystem. No competing restaurant next door, no discount souvenir shop across the street. It's all you. Operating profit margins on well-run themed resort hotels routinely run between 30 and 40%. And during bad weather, which can devastate a day trip park, hotel guests stay in the resort and keep spending even when rides are closed. The hotel is a financial shock absorber. This is an industry where a thunderstorm can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single afternoon. Your cost structure is largely fixed, but your revenue is entirely variable. Whether you have 30,000 guests or 3,000 guests on a given day, you still owe the same staff hours, the same utilities, the same insurance, the same debt service. Heavy rain forces the closure of your most important rides. High-speed outdoor coasters can't operate because water affects braking performance. Lightning detected within 5 to 10 miles triggers mandatory shutdowns of all outdoor rides. Extreme heat drives families to stay home in air conditioning. Hurricanes force multi-day closures. Winter freezes crack underground plumbing. Smart operators use predictive meteorology software to adjust staffing dynamically before a rainy day begins. They invest in indoor attractions that stay open regardless of weather. They issue rain check vouchers instead of cash refunds, keeping capital inside the business, but there is no fully hedging against weather. It remains one of the most unpredictable and financially consequential forces in the entire business. A typical regional park in the United States operates somewhere between 120 and 180 days per year. 6 months of serious operation, clustered around summer with shoulder periods in spring and fall. For the other 6 months, the park is either partially open for special events or completely dark, but it still owes money. Property taxes keep accruing. Security personnel keep the facility safe from vandalism and weather damage. Engineers and mechanics execute the major overhauls that can't happen when guests are on property. The corporate management team, the marketing department, the accountants, they're all still on salary. The business model requires generating enough net cash flow in 6 months of operation to fund 12 months of fixed obligations. This is where seasonal events become not just fun but financially critical. Cedar Fair's Knott's Scary Farm in California and Universal's Halloween Horror Nights are the gold standard. These events transform parks into haunted attractions during September and October, charging separate admission, often higher than standard summer tickets, and attracting young adults aged 18 to 30 who aren't traditional summer park guests. That demographic is less price-sensitive and spends heavily on specialty food, drinks, and exclusive merchandise. Winter Christmas festivals serve a similar purpose, extending weekend operations through November and December in moderate climates. These shoulder season events smooth the cash flow curve, support year-round employment for core staff, and accelerate the timeline for paying back the initial investment. A successful park that generates strong profits does not simply sit on those profits. It immediately reinvests them. And if it doesn't, it starts dying. The reason is something called attraction fatigue. The first time a guest rides your signature coaster, it's an extraordinary experience. The 10th time, across multiple visits over several years, it's routine. Human beings habituate to experiences very quickly. What was thrilling becomes ordinary, and ordinary doesn't sell tickets. A park cannot survive on its existing ride inventory. Industry practice is to add at least one significant new attraction every 2 to 3 years, with a major headline ride, the kind that generates regional media coverage and appears in television advertising every 3 to 5 years. Major parks typically budget between 3 and 7% of gross annual revenues every year for capital reinvestment, directed toward new attractions, ride refurbishments, updated theming, and park improvements year after year without pause. Failure to maintain that cycle triggers a financial death spiral. Attendance drops, season pass renewals fall, pricing power weakens, the park starts discounting tickets, margins compress, less profit means less capital to reinvest. Less investment makes the park even less attractive. Down and down it goes, until the park finds new capital or closes. Let's be honest about the catastrophic risks, because they're real and they're expensive. A ride accident that injures or kills a guest is the single most devastating event that can happen to a park. Not just morally, financially. The immediate consequence is mandatory shutdown of the ride during a regulatory investigation. Depending on the findings, that shutdown can last days, weeks, or permanently. Legal liability suits follow, often running into the millions. Insurance premiums increase substantially at the next renewal, and the reputational damage suppresses park-wide attendance for years. Guests are risk-sensitive. They remember. And once they stop trusting a park, winning that trust back takes a very long time and a very large marketing budget. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated another category of catastrophic risk that nobody in the industry had seriously modeled before 2020. Parks across the United States and the United Kingdom faced total operational shutdowns for months. Revenue went to zero. Fixed costs did not. Property taxes kept accruing. Debt service kept accruing. Security and basic maintenance had to continue. Several smaller independent operators did not survive. Larger conglomerates with diversified revenue streams and access to capital markets weathered the storm, but they emerged with significantly higher debt loads. Economic recessions hit parks more slowly, but just as hard. Amusement parks are definitionally discretionary spending. When household budgets tighten, the annual family trip to the theme park is one of the first things to go. During the 2008 and 2009 recession, virtually every major park operator in the United States reported significant attendance declines and was forced to reduce ticket prices and increase promotional discounting to maintain volume. Let's put the entire picture together with honest numbers. Take a mid-sized regional park that costs $60 million to build. In a good year, it might generate $22 million in gross revenue. Gate admissions bring in around $14 million. Food and beverage generates nearly $4 million. Merchandise adds another $1.7 million. Parking and extras account for the rest. Now subtract the costs. Labor at 35% of revenue runs to about $7.7 million. Utilities at 5% cost around $1.1 million. Insurance at 4% adds $880,000. Marketing at 8% consumes $1.76 million. Maintenance, supplies, and administrative costs add another $2 to $3 million. Debt service on the original $60 million construction loan, financed over 20 years, adds roughly $4 million annually. That gets you to a net operating income in a good year of somewhere between $3 and $5 million. To pay back your $60 million investment at that pace, you're looking at 12 to 20 years. That is the realistic timeline, not the fantasy, not the worst case. The realistic base case: in a bad year, a wet summer, and a significant ride mechanical issue, revenue might drop to $16 million while costs barely move. Suddenly, your $4 million profit becomes a $1 million loss. The difference between a good year and a bad year is $5 to $6 million. That gap is the business. Managing that gap, hedging against it, smoothing it with shoulder season events and hotel revenue and dynamic pricing, that is the actual work of running an amusement park. For an institutional investor or a large entertainment conglomerate with patient capital and a deep management team, yes. Stabilized parks with strong demographics and disciplined operations are attractive long-term assets. They generate recurring cash flow, they own appreciating real estate, they benefit from enormous barriers to entry that protect them from new competition. Nobody builds a competing park next door. For an individual entrepreneur with limited capital who wants to build from scratch, the risks are enormous. The capital requirements are non-negotiable minimums. The operating complexity demands professional management across engineering, hospitality, food service, entertainment, and finance simultaneously. A bad season, a ride incident, or a cold summer can be existential. The parks that print money are the ones that treat this business as what it actually is, not a collection of rides. A sophisticated, multi-layered economic engine where every square foot of real estate is optimized to generate multiple revenue streams, every piece of infrastructure is engineered to last decades, and every guest interaction is designed to extract maximum value from the emotional experience of a perfect day. There's a detailed business guide available in the description and pinned in the first comment below. It covers business fundamentals worth reading if content like this interests you. Take a moment to check it out. Behind every thrilling ride, behind every laughing child, behind every churro cart and souvenir shop, is one of the most capital-intensive, operationally demanding, financially sophisticated businesses ever built. The magic is real, the engineering is extraordinary, and the economics are brutally unforgiving to anyone who doesn't understand them completely before they begin. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this channel keep growing. Thanks for watching.